Hello again. It's Paul from New Jersey Recovery and Wellness. Thank you for continuing to tune in for National Recovery Month, where every single day we're talking about how to support someone who you know and love who has a substance use disorder or is in early recovery. Today is day 14 of our 30-part series. Come check it out. Make a crisis plan. Crisis planning is not something that we generally look forward to doing. However, it's something that we need to do. It's a safety measure for emergencies only. The main question I want to address to start us off is, what is a crisis plan? A crisis plan is an agreed upon plan of action that you and your family or other loved ones will take if the person in your life with a substance use disorder begins to show signs of relapse or recurrence. Ideally, we don't want to have to use the crisis plan. However, you want to be sure that you have one, even if you don't need it, rather than needing one and not having it and not having any idea where to start. You may want to think of it as having a go bag, a ready plan in case of an emergency. We use these in many different situations over the course of our lives. For me, just as an example, I always keep a spare shirt and a spare pair of pants in my office just in case I have a spill of coffee or of food and I don't want to experience embarrassment with my next sessions for the day. And if you've ever had the joy of having a child, you're likely to be more than familiar with the idea of having a baby bag, something that's ready to go for when you head to the hospital for delivery. Whatever the case is, when you make plans and preparations in advance, you're more prepared and usually feeling more confident, more ready to handle an emergency, if and when it should occur. When we don't take the time to make these preparations, we may be more likely to scramble, to panic, be a little bit more flustered and less equipped to make decisions that might need to be made more immediately. How do you support a loved one who has a substance use disorder? Make a crisis plan. First thing to note here, there's no right or wrong way to make a plan. Your plan simply needs to meet the needs of your family situation. That's all. And of course, your situation may be completely different from another person's situation. So who's to judge? That being said, you do want to make sure that there are some general bases that are covered. And this is all something that you can have as part of your conversation with the person in your life who has a substance use disorder. You're definitely going to want to define what is an emergency. What do you believe constitutes enacting this crisis plan that you're making? For some individuals, it may be an overdose. For other individuals, it may be any sign that there has been a relapse. And again, that's something that you're going to want to more individually define based on your family situation. Some family members may be able to point out certain triggers, certain dispositions or observations that are going to be telltale signs that a person is struggling. Other families in a different situation, it might not be about the relapse. It might be about other consequences that are coming up in a person's life that are resulting from a person's use that is going to constitute a crisis. Again, there's no right and wrong here. This is something that is to be discussed and understood between you, your loved one that has a substance use disorder, and other people that are involved in this planning process. You're also going to want to talk about notifications. When there is an emergency that's been established and the crisis plan is being enacted, who are the individuals that we want to be in the fold of what's happening here? This may include significant others, family members, employers, therapists, even sponsors from self-help groups. It's also going to be worthwhile to talk about where to go for help. This may include identifying local preferred hospitals in the event of a medical emergency or even an overdose. This may be preferred treatment centers. If I have a loved one that needs to go for help and needs to go away for treatment, what is the particular facility that we're going to be contacting? Am I able to already contact this treatment facility with my loved one to give some basic information so that the pre-qualifying intake information is mostly done and that we really just have to call back and schedule, possibly provide some more updated information if we do need to move forward with seeking treatment at a later point in time. It's also going to be worthwhile to discuss if we want to include other physicians or other treating providers as different places for where we're going to go for help. If your loved one is currently involved in counseling or any other type of program, are we going to make sure that we go there together as a family for the next scheduled visit? Do we also want to make sure that we have contact information for this treating provider to be able to outreach to them to let them know that there's something that's going on? Especially when we have a loved one with a substance use disorder that may be a little bit more high risk. We're going to want to talk about being able to have access to personal documents that can really help out, especially if we believed that the person of interest here may not be able to make some of their own active decisions in the case of this crisis. Some common documents to keep in mind are going to be having a copy of a driver's license, a copy of an insurance card, any information on any hospital or indemnity insurances. It's also going to be useful to have a list of medications as well as a list of medical conditions that the person is receiving treatment for. If this person in your life also has any legal documentation for a power of attorney, you're going to want to have this on hand in the event if it needs to be used at some point in the future. If a person may be considering going away for any form of treatment, it's probably also going to be useful to have information for their human resources department if this person is employed. You may want to copy or download copies of paperwork that may need to be filled out for short-term disability or Family Medical Leave Act. Another very large consideration that can be helpful in discussing prior to an emergency is how to handle life logistics when there is an emergency. Now, these life logistics are going to vary from person to person, and there's no way that we can overview all of them in today's video, but some common suggestions for things to think about are going to be as follows. First and foremost, if your loved one has children that are minors, who's going to provide childcare? What's that going to look like? Where are the kids going to go after school? Are they going to be living with a family member? Or is there another person that's in their home who is going to be able to take care of them? Is there any contact information for a landlord in the event that your loved one with a substance use disorder is renting? Are there any questions when it comes to rental assistance or making sure that mortgage payments are being made on a timely basis? Is there contact information that's provided for an employer or a supervisor at work should the person be missing out on work for whatever reason? Key takeaway here is if there's anything that needs to be done in regards to a social, financial, or legal obligation, we want to make sure that members involved in this crisis plan have access to this, to make sure that should the loved one not be able to make these decisions or make these phone calls during the course of this emergency, that these very, very important matters are able to be attended to. A final consideration that I like to make sure to include in any crisis plan is being able to very, very carefully, very tactfully identify a list of people, places, or things that may be attached to a relapse or recurrence for this particular individual who may still be struggling with substance use. What we're really getting at here is if this person happens to really slide back in their recovery or really take a negative turn with their substance use and go off the grid, not responding to any outreach, how can you find them? When this information is communicated, we want to make sure that we're able to just leave that as it is and just part of the crisis plan. We're not looking to intervene unless there is a need to. This is why it's very, very important to make sure that we're able to have this conversation very, very calmly, very, very peacefully, and really identifying that this is really just for protection purposes if it's needed, not for anything else. How you come up this plan is going to be very much up to you, as well as the individual in your life who has a substance use disorder. But ideally, you're going to want to sit down and include them in this process. Have a loving, calm interaction, open conversation, discuss the need for a plan, and talk about what components are going to be important to include in it. Again, every family is going to be a little bit different. Of all of the considerations I outlined today, maybe only a few of them are going to apply for your family situation. You may have other considerations that we didn't even get a chance to talk on. Again, whatever it is that is going to be a part of this crisis plan, it needs to make sense for you and your family situation, nothing else. And of course, your loved one with the substance use disorder is ideally going to have input and driving decisions on how they would seek getting help. Thank you so much for continuing to check out our National Recovery Month series and for viewing the Day 14 video. If you liked what you saw here, please do click that like and subscribe and ring that notification bell so that you can get notifications for upcoming videos in this series or other videos that we put up on our channel. As always, please share this information with anyone that you think could benefit from it. We appreciate you continuing to hang out with us here at New Jersey Recovery and Wellness. Have a good one. Catch you next time.